Many people can claim they are elite and skilled in FPS games, or that they're the best Tekken or Street Fighter player that they know. And yes, those people can be impressive in a lot of ways. However, I always felt that some of the most unsung gaming heroes are those players who first figure out a difficult boss fight that others thought was impossible, or puzzles that seem impossible at first glance in most traditional senses. This goes double, especially in the days where you couldn't share information or strategies that easily. I'm thinking of games like Myst. Nevertheless, there's something to the rush of figuring out a situation that you're able to get through by the skin of your teeth without any outside help. And I would put those high among some of the most satisfying moments in my gaming life. So, when I was approached by Fruitbat Factory to review ThistleMine, a puzzle RPG that mixes traditional exploration logic puzzles with difficult RPG fights that have specialized skills and limited items to get you through the fights, I was all for it. It releases today, Tuesday, June 18th, 2024, for the price of $18.99 for the PC, specifically Steam. But before I go any further, this key was obtained from the publisher, Fruitbat Factory, I just told you that, for the purposes of review. That won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but you should know that because of FTC guidelines, as well as the whole morals thing, you know? So ThistleMine puts you in the shoes of Noah, an excavator being deployed into the anonymous exclusion zone, which is basically if someone took space and time, threw it into a blender, and threw in some thick miasma as a topping. Your job is to basically kill anything that has been corrupted, like your own members of the excavation corps, gather powerful artifacts that can help you, and survive this harsh world. You do that in two ways, which is where I'll start the discussion: the gameplay exploration and combat, both which are heavily puzzle-based. Now, I want to set the expectation of these puzzles from the get-go. I am 37 years old. I'm a software engineer who sees logic puzzles and has to do problem solving on a regular basis. I've played games, especially puzzle games, since the days of the original NES. So, how did I, someone who I would consider to be in the high tier of experience and puzzle solving in both RPG and puzzle games, deal with ThistleMine? Well, I will let Vlad, my wonderful vampire companion, show you a visual representation of my experience. Vlad, if you don't mind.
Alright, you haven't told me what I need to do, but I'm here. What am I do? Please don't. Ah! Ah! Ow! Ah! Why, Mr. Chompy? Why? Ah! Please, for the love of God, don't! Ah! Everything is pain. Oh, hi, Benny. How you do? Please don't. Ah!
I owe him some prime grade A blood for that one. Now, to be clear, this does not mean that the game is good nor bad per se, but you need to understand a couple of things from the get-go, even before I get into the more details of the gameplay. ThistleMine will not hold your hand, like I've seen other puzzle games do. It will give you the information on screen that you need to figure out things, in one way or another, but it will not, in most cases, tell you the solutions outright, or even give you hints in terms of if you get stuck, especially for alternate paths, which I'll get into. This is a game that not only expects you to get things wrong and experiment, you're going to most assuredly do so, and that struggle and overcoming it is how you will get the most out of ThistleMine. In my opinion, if you're looking up a guide in your first run to the puzzle or fights, you're doing it wrong. But to each their own. Some people can enjoy that. But let me actually explain what you'll be doing. I mean, I'm almost 5 minutes into this video. Let's start with the exploration. You'll move around and be able to interact with certain things in the environment. But most of the exploration puzzles, you'll come across a sign that explains the general gist of what you'll need to do. Sometimes you'll need to move through a series of doors that seemingly go in and out of themselves. Sometimes you'll need to go through a hedge maze with a series of specific movements to get you to the end. In general, you're getting to the end of an area to find someone, new battles, or new resources, and you'll have to solve the maze and the puzzle to get through that. And that isn't necessarily easy. Most of these puzzles rely on you looking at the environment, understanding that information that's on screen, and then doing something to try to learn more about the puzzle, or to get through the series once you think you've figured most of it out. Most of these areas have loop-like elements, where if you get it wrong, you go back to the start and you'll have to try again, or sometimes a checkpoint. The information in question isn't always painfully obvious what it means, and that's the challenge here. Sure, for example, there are flowers in here, and maybe the number of flowers next to the stairs indicate a number that I add up to, and maybe I have to add up to a certain amount to get through to the next area. But what if they're colored? What does that mean? Why do these up here, do they mean something? Is that what I need to match? That kind of problem solving is present in this game. It won't tell you specifically what you have to do, but you play around with things to try to figure it out. In fact, it's layered problem solving that may give you one solution on the first part based on what you think the equation or solution is. But then you do it, you get it right, and then try to apply it the second time around and realize that, no, you stumbled across the first solution by accident, and now you have to refine your thinking. This is pen and paper type solutions in a lot of cases, because of multiple factors. In some cases, brute forcing certain attempts and gathering information can be helpful to eliminate certain factors. The thing is, some parts have multiple solutions to it, so just because you got one, you may want to explore getting another one, because there's also alternate paths. Now, the thing is, once you figure it out in most cases, at least the standard solution, it isn't necessarily the most complex of solutions to input. But they aren't trivial in a lot of cases either. And you'll probably hit yourself for not seeing certain things that would have made things a lot easier. If I can give any advice in this game, look at everything closely, not just what draws your attention almost immediately. Because, yeah, that other information is there for a reason. Will you get stuck? Yeah, at times you will. And you'll probably want to go hit another puzzle or RPG boss while you let your mind mull on that. Which the game does have times where it has multiple places that you can explore and try. So that's good. Now granted, there will be times that you're stuck on one puzzle that you just can't get through, or a fight you think you need more help on, and you won't have any real idea that you can actually do something else. Are there more paths? Is there actually another place I can go? Am I missing something with this puzzle with an alternate solution to find some other fight? No idea. That can get frustrating. And no, do not look it up like I told you not to at the start of this video. I will say that the exploration puzzles do pull the same similar tricks that it sticks to over and over again. And I want to say there could be more variety in the puzzles that I haven't seen, but let's move on to the actual combat puzzles, because that will probably interest you RPG fans a little bit more. For the battle RPG element of the discussion here, I'm going to actually give you a sample fight using the temporal rift mode of the game. You have your regular campaign, you have a timed version of the campaign, but more on that later, and then you have the temporal rift, which is basically a mode that allows you to test the fights in question, try to figure out exactly how to approach the fights, despite the fact that you may have to do some adjustments or hold off on certain items if you want to do the way that you're doing it in the campaign. So, we have Noah here, and we've got the Kargeria Hounds and Mulrins. Now, obviously, I could just fire at them and hope for the best, but here's the thing. Each fight has a turn limit. The idea here is that the miasma, the sort of, energy around you, will consume you after a certain amount of turns. You have to get rid of all these creatures and the miasma around them before you're able to win. And you do that by, well, destroying everyone on field. But it's never simple. Yes, I can fire at things and maybe heal myself, but obviously if I, heal and they heal themselves, I may run out of turns. So I want some information on them. And that means I'm going to use my glass eye. This is the most important item in the game, in my opinion. The idea here is that it gives you a general idea of what they will do. So, for example, the hounds will attack with their hand hats. Okay, the 6 hands all over the place. And they are somewhat defensive in terms of they have some ways of protecting themselves, but they're not too tough. Now, the girl in the middle will heal and strengthen those hands, and she will do a counterattack if she's attacked directly. So the question becomes, okay, who do I focus on? Obviously, as you can see on the screen here, the hands have a level 3 defense, while the middle one has a level 5 defense. So if they're healing over time, like Moran says here, maybe I want to focus on getting those hands down first, and then focus on the middle one. That will save me some resources that I have to use. But that's a question. Do I really want to save resources, or do I want to save myself time? And that's one of the ideas about this game. Sometimes you do get choices based on what items you've saved from other fights. For example, you have here, okay, I got 99 of everything, but that's not going to be the case in many fights. You'll have maybe 1, 2 items of a certain type, like one corrosive grenade. All right, I can put corrosion on him, but is that going to help? So, obviously, I want to try to figure out, okay, I want to take these characters on one by one, maybe. Try to take them out in one hit. What skills do I have? Well, I could raise my critical hit and my HP regeneration with a bottle of Scrumpy, but I don't think that's going to help me. I could do a corrosive shot. It would do damage over time, but they're going to heal over it. No, the strategy that I chose and what I had available to me was this one, the Kargaria artifact. So what I would do is I would use this, and you can see there, they're healing and being able to counter and max HP up. They're going to slap me, not a lot of damage, granted, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that artifact to boost my critical rate, my power, and be ready for, well, what's going to come next. I'm actually going to do it a couple of times. Now, granted, this character is a little bit stronger than how I faced them in the actual campaign, so you'll get an idea of the strategy I used in general. But, okay, they're going to slap, they're going to slap, they're going to slap over and over again. I'm going to raise my thing to 2. And what I would usually do at this point is heal with this timely rejuvenation, because obviously I'm okay here, but in the actual fight, I would be a little bit damaged more than I was because I was at a lower level. So I'm just going to do that for the sake of it. Now, each of these skills and abilities have their downsides to it. Obviously, I could heal for full HP and SP, but at the end of the turn. So the thing is, if they kill me before the end of the turn is up, well, sucks to be me, right? So I got to be wary of, can they kill me in this turn? Is 400 health going to be enough? Is 500 health going to be enough? I don't know. All right, we're going to do it one more time, just for the sake of it. And I know that this artifact has a limitation on it. So it's going to have a period of time where it will stop working in terms of once I get it up to level 3. Right now it's at level 2 based off the arrows down there. So I'm at full power. And I also have a crit, so now I know I can fire at one of them. And they're going to slap me, of course. Now, in this case, I have a rapid-fire gun, which allowed me to kill 2 of them. I didn't have that in the actual fight. I only had 1. But as you can see, I took 1 of them out, and I could do it again. Well, I took 2 of them out, but in the actual fight that I'm not going to show you in this case because, again, it could give some other information about how to go about things based on what artifacts I have. I don't want to spoil the game for anybody because I think that is a critical part of the game. The fact of the matter is, what enemies you fight, what enemies that you take on at certain times, and what items are used will make a unique run for you. Now, you see there, I was able to kill one but not the other because I didn't crit or set up the crit like I could with the timely regeneration. So the idea here is, what skills do I have? What can I use at the very moment? And what will get me through this fight with maybe some resources used, but not a lot? Because some fights are going to give you troubles based on what level you are, what you have available, and what artifacts you have available. And certain fights give you specific benefits if you approach them without certain items available, certain artifacts available. That's the thing. The sort of campaign has a lot of flexibility to it. Have I seen it all? Hell no, I haven't even beaten the game once because of the way it's designed. But I have approached, going down different paths, and I've noticed how my strategy changes on each run. It's a little bit different. Maybe I can save an item here, maybe I save an item there. But sometimes it's maybe beneficial to use an item just to get through a tough fight. Because time can be an element of this game if you play the second mode of the game. Yes, the second mode of the game is very similar to the first, except there's a time limit. As in, there's a time limit. You can't, it's 2 hours. The game can be defeated in 2 hours if you go on a specific path, but that's sort of the draw. It's the fact that, well, if you know what you're doing, you can get through it, but do you? And can you get it through in the path that you want to go on? All right, back to the more edited part of the review. I will give the game a bit of credit as well for keeping the variety of the RPG fights up. Sometimes you gotta be defensive, sometimes you gotta be offensive, but it was a good mixture of thinking about when to heal, when to get that crit, or when to be a little bit more conservative, that the game really shined at making me think in every single battle. Granted, the first few are just, okay, you're getting used to the game, but when the game gets going, it gets going. Granted, if you're expecting a lot of flexibility in that, you're not going to get it here. Again, it wants you to do a certain strategy, and you may have a couple of options, but the main strategy is going to be based off of one thing, at least from what I see. Now, for clarity's sake, this is the boss that I had the most trouble with and actually wasn't able to get past in terms of my first run. Her immunity to weakness and her natural regeneration, I just couldn't do the damage I needed to take her out in the number of turns, and I had used too many items in other situations that could probably have helped me here. You'd think that would possibly be a negative, but the thing is, I actually think that's more of a positive. It's very much like something like Fear and Hunger, where, yeah, I got to a certain point and then I couldn't continue. Everything was overwhelming. But I could always go back to the start and try again. And with this game in particular, unlike Fear and Hunger, at least in my opinion, it's a lot easier to do that because the game is designed to be finished in 2 hours if you know what you're doing. Granted, it's going to take you a long time to get to that point. Let's also talk a little bit about the presentation. The fact is that this is a Fruitbat Factory published game, but a new developer, and yet it feels like a Fruitbat Factory game. It's the eyes, it's the specific coloring of the eyes in games like Sora and 100% Orange Juice that sort of jumps out here. It's not specifically the same, but it's similar enough where I'm like, oh yeah, this is Fruitbat Factory at a quick glance. And I like the style. It has a good amount of anime influences, but it still is its own thing without being too... But I will admit that some of the designs were actually rather nice, rather interesting in terms of the environment, and use the environment well to tell a story, like the door mimic here. And yes, before you ask, the mimics in this game scared the shit out of me to the point where I was physically injured. I know you probably didn't ask that, but I had to mention it because with a certain mimic, I smashed my knee in surprise against the desk. It was the most effective jump scare I've had in years. I don't want to make this review too long, so I'm going to briefly talk about the music and sound. It's effective in terms of the RPG battles, and the exploration music isn't necessarily the best. It has some mystery elements to it, but it isn't something that makes me want to get immersed in the world. The battle music does remind me of really tense RPG fights of the past, while still having its own sort of thing. Just take a listen to a couple of samples here, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. The last thing I want to mention is the story/writing of the game, because with puzzle games, it is very easy to overlook the writing in terms of world building, characters, etc. And ThistleMine does a great job of making a world that I want to see more of, and intrigued by, okay, what are these different paths I could go down? What are these characters? How did they get infected? I want to learn more about every character I come across because of the unique designs, because of the interesting lore that is set up here. The game also has this weird way of getting laughs out of me in ways that I don't think I was supposed to laugh at. It's things like the writing of this profile, where it's a big tree. It won't do much except fall over. It weighs a lot. I should probably get out of the way if it falls. It's not dry humor, but it is clever writing, or writing that keeps you on your toes in terms of expectations, especially with the content of the writing here. The fact is, this is horror in terms of what's happening to these, excavators, and therefore, you sort of don't expect it at times. I do like the little moments of the game where you get a tiny bit of character information, like how Sagi just takes what she wants, and I wish I saw more of that in the early going to sort of establish some of these side characters. But the fact is that the story is going to be something that you're going to probably learn over a series of runs, and the fact is, I didn't see as much of it as I wanted to in this first impressions. So, what are my final thoughts on ThistleMine? Well, the fact of the matter is, I enjoyed the game. I enjoyed bringing out a notepad and a pen and writing down possible solutions, being frustrated at and trying to figure out what the game was trying to tell me, and then getting that aha moment and really overcoming some of the challenges put forth in the game. The game has a charm with its presentation and its characters, and I wanted to see more of the story, and I will. But I will admit that it is not for everyone. The fact is, those who need a helping hand will run into problems here, and it just doesn't have the same effect when you have to look up these solutions. It's not that type of game. Not a lot of puzzle games are. What really drove this score home is that when I thought about RPGs and puzzles in combination with each other, there weren't a lot that I could think of. Sure, in RPG games, you're going to get those puzzle elements in most of the time optional fights, but this one was a good combination, especially with the replayability option and trying to do the time-based challenges. And that has something to it. It's solid, and that's why it gets an 86 out of 100. It's worth a buy, unless you're hurting it for cash. But that does not take into account my enhancer system, which takes the more subjective element of games and tries to match a game to you. If you fall into one of the following categories on screen, add or subtract that score to the main score. If the first digit of your score changes, refer to this chart to see if the game lies in the buyability rating for you. And as you can see, this game is going to be divisive. like I said, some people are going to really enjoy it, and some people are absolutely going to hate it. It's one of those niche games, and even though I have a buyability niche buy score, it just did enough to really be a solid buy, just not for certain people. Anyway, if you made it this far into the review, thank you. I apologize for the lack of content over the last several weeks. The fact of the matter is, I went on vacation to visit my family, and it was something I needed. Granted, I'm playing a lot of catch-up now, and it's going to be a little bit of a rough couple of weeks. I do have reviews of Parasite Eve and Dino Crisis I'm working on, but it's going to take a little bit of time to adjust my review scoring system to them, especially with retro games. But keep an eye on them. Now, I do want to mention that upcoming on Twitch, I will be working with the Sentinels of the Store in terms of a charity stream. That charity stream will be with Doctors Without Borders, and specifically I will be playing doctor-themed games, and I'll keep you guys, abreast of the situation. Anyway, what's next on the channel? No idea. Join the Discord and you'll find out as soon as I do. Anyway, that's it for now, and as always, keep on gaming.